the war room expected. But wars have a way of developing their own momentum. The politicians in Washington and London who backed this campaign still believe they've done the right thing. If there was a misjudgment, said one NATO official, it was to underestimate Milosevic's ambition. It might prove a costly mistake.
In a further escalation of the air war, NATO bombed one of President Slobodan Milosevic's 2 official residences in Belgrade. The ruling family was not using the property at the time of the attack, but it brought NATO firepower closer to the man they blame for ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, and appeared to serve as a warning that both the Yugoslav leader and his political associates stand to lose more of their assets as the bombing grinds on.
The troops on the ground. The growing NATO force poised against Yugoslavia is drowning out talk of cracks in the alliance and pushing aside disagreements over strategy.
Ground forces using troops to drive the Serbs out of Kosovo would be, one official here says, big, costly, protracted, and dangerous.
Pictures of an American A-10 in action over Kosovo today, dropping a stick of bombs, then climbing hard, dispensing flares to confuse heat-seeking missiles. Last night, cruise missiles hit one of Serb President Milosevic's homes. President alone can force Milosevic to meet their terms. Nevertheless, NATO has begun a reassessment of what it would take to invade Kosovo. Although Allied officials said again today it's not going to happen.
The Italian Garibaldi Brigade with its heavy mortars could provide crucial protection for a battle group moving forward at speed. In the jargon, they could soften up resistance encountered ahead of an advance. On the flanks, a commander might deploy Magusta helicopters, also Italian. They're fast like the Apache, but not as heavily armed. All this cover for the Royal Engineers and the crucial role they would play in a Kosovo theatre. Bridge building and mine clearing, barriers to an advance diagnosed and identified by their reconnaissance units. No incursion, especially at speed, could proceed effectively over compromised, in other words, booby-trapped and sabotaged terrain.
We are right at the very front. We go in, we pick out the routes, we bound up to whatever obstacle we come to, whether it be possible bridge site, a mines field, blocked road, and we then call on our assets.
Overwatch is the term for tank deployment. These German panzers could provide long-range heavy fire protection for an operation. And RAF Pumas can swiftly move ground troops into advanced positions, ferrying anti-tank weaponry and hand-carried missiles, as well as the essential role of medical evacuation. But while NATO considers its options, we can see its jets continuing to target Serb positions.
And the next slide is the post-strike photograph on 20 April.
Troops in a field, in an open field, launching missiles at tanks there. Anti-tank missiles fired there, hitting their marks earlier today. Close to 1,900 more British troops are expected here to join these troops in the next couple of days. But again, these NATO troops amassed here some time ago. Originally, they were part of the peacekeeping troops that were supposed to go into Kosovo if the Rambouillet agreement was approved in Paris. Obviously, it was not. And again, we are where we are here today. Riley.
1,000 more troops, 15 more tanks, 14 more Bradley fighting vehicles, and 9 more anti-personnel missile systems to Tirana, Albania, to reinforce a battalion of 24 Apache attack helicopters. The additional deployments will begin early next week and will bring the number of U.S. ground troops in Albania to just over 5,000.
Carrier pilots, as well as other Allied pilots, bad visibility over Yugoslavia has been a constant. Combine it with NATO restrictions on flying at higher altitudes, you have some frustrated flyers.
The initial stages, the altitude restriction's not a big deal, but now as we continue on and are having to break out targets versus non-targets, you need to get down a little bit lower, because even though 20/20 vision is a pilot quality, it's still tough.
They may be flying high, but the Serbs are still gunning for them.
We've seen significant amounts of anti-aircraft artillery. We've seen an occasional surface-to-air missile shot. Most of them are unguided, but it's still a bit unnerving when it comes at you.
From the deck of the USS Nassau through the haze, you can sometimes see the snow-covered mountains of Albania. Pilots aboard the USS Nassau have an advantage over most other NATO pilots. They start out hundreds of miles closer to the targets. That can make a difference even when the weather is bad.
By virtue of the fact that we're closer and we're on a relatively short alert timeline, we can get to the action quicker.
The Harriers are not the only attack aircraft aboard the USS Nassau. There are Cobras, attack helicopters with significant firepower, including anti-tank missiles, helicopters similar to the Apaches.
The Apache goes out ahead and can do more of a deep air support mission. I'm there with the troops, right down close.
There are no ground troops yet, so the Cobras have not been called upon.
We've been pushing any and all missions we can do. Something I've been pushing for is possibly working together with them. That way we're sharing the capabilities of both, and I think you get the best of both worlds.
For now, only the Harriers answer the call to battle from the USS Nassau, unless NATO decides to change the nature of that call. Rusty Dornan, CNN, aboard the USS.
From our recent operations for your review. The first is a pre-strike image of the Gniliane army garrison in Kosovo, the home of the 52nd Artillery. And the next is the strike picture, which was taken right after the strike on the same facility. And the strike was on the 22nd of April. I have 3 videos for you from multi-aircraft strikes against underground petroleum storage facilities in the vicinity of Sombar. Let's see the first video. And the other two to follow right away. This, ladies and gentlemen,
war, a few days of airstrikes would be enough to bring Milosevic to the negotiating table. But it didn't happen, and the failure has turned out to be an expensive one. Now NATO has to increase its firepower in the Balkans almost daily. The latest addition is 24 US Apache helicopters, tank killers which saw service in the Persian Gulf. The US is the undisputed leader in the arms race. Washington is throwing more and more of its formidable weaponry into the fray.
I think that the monetary cost is a small consideration beside the appalling human cost that's occurred so far.
The US makes up half of the Allied force, and that could soon increase to as much as 80%. It's a huge drain on state coffers. The president has had to ask Congress for an additional $6 billion. Analysts say that amount is unlikely to last beyond mid-May.
The real cost of this war is going to be at least twice that. And if it's typical, and there is a long ground presence in the region, we could easily be talking sums in excess of $20 billion.
The high-tech air war is believed to have cost almost $1 billion so far. The price tag on just one cruise missile is $1 million. The missiles loaded on the B-52s cost $2 million. Fuel and technical support for each fighter comes in at $10,000 for each hour in the air, Only one NATO plane has been downed so far, but it was one of the most expensive. The F-117 cost $43 million. Someone is going to have to foot the bill. The United States isn't exactly happy about providing most of the machinery for a war some consider a purely European affair.
Del Colle in Italy.
The RAF is now using bombs with twice the power of those previously dropped on Serb targets. To keep up the pressure and hit even harder, they've brought in 2,000-pound laser-guided Paveway 3 bombs, designed for accuracy and maximum destruction.
The switch to this bigger and even more devastating bomb is a sign of NATO's determination to destroy even the most elusive of Serb forces.
RAF personnel at their base at Gioia del Colle in southern Italy believe it's a significant step in NATO's attempts to bring the Serb army to its knees.
I would like to think that this particular weapon is getting used against something like the tunnels that they're hiding their armour and the vehicles that are transporting some of the perpetrators of these crimes.
Today, 2 Paveway 3s were used to attack a road bridge in Kosovo, which was used as a main supply route for Serb units.
It's a discussion process to choose the right weapon to achieve the results that are required. Now, it just so happened that today's target, because it was a fairly hard bridge, required the accuracy, the penetration, and the blast available to us with the Paveway 3, and hence it was the best weapon for the task.
The RAF have also been using cluster bombs, taking advantage of improved weather conditions over the target areas. They believe their role in the NATO air campaign remains significant and effective. David Crabtree, Sky News, Southern Italy.
This is an image taken before the start of NATO air operation. It is of the Kozovska Mitrovica ammunition storage depot located in northern Kosovo. And the next slide shows the accumulative effect of precision air attacks against this facility. As can be seen, all the storage bunkers and their contents have been successfully struck. The following videos are all from attacks on the 21st of April. The first shows an attack against the Novi Sad refinery facility, which, as you are aware from our briefings, we have targeted on more than one occasion. The next video is from the same attack, but from a different aircraft. The next cockpit video is of an attack against a hangar at the Pristina airfield, an element of the integrated air defense system. You also see a damaged aircraft on the ramp. The following is one of our attacks on the explosive production capacity of the Frye military. This is the facility at Baric. Look at the fences. They are probably electrical power fences, and you will see them after the strike again because they emit heat. The final video is of the Kosmaka highway bridge, one of the lines of communication utilized by the Serb forces to enter Kosovo from Serbia. You will even see 2 vehicles we did not hit. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my part.
precision-guided attacks, but also using the cluster weapons. These are the ones that have 147 little bomblets which go out. And the Harriers actually having 20 sorties is quite a phenomenal number for them. So actually I would imagine they were having a very difficult time in turning the aircraft around, or perhaps should I say challenging time. But all the aircraft returned safely, and only
work, and with the good work from the UNHCR, we're going to be ready for whatever.
General standard question: when are the Apaches going to be operational?
Oh, I'm not going to deal with that question right here. I'm going to do something down in.
Are you concerned about the security situation for the refugees?
Well, we are concerned about the security situation. As you know, part of the plan is to continue to move the refugees from here down south. It's better for climatic reasons, it's better because it opens up space, and it's better for security reasons. So we're looking at all those things.
What are
we're, of course, following the lead of UNHCR. UNHCR is the lead agency, and the forces from NATO are here to provide support to the UNHCR. And frankly, UNHCR has the strategy and has the plans well in hand. And I also want to compliment the people of Albania, who have been incredibly generous in dealing with this tragedy for the Kosovo Albanians. Thank you very much.
How significant is his visit?
Well, his visit here up to Kukash, yes, he's been saying he is there to look and check at the humanitarian aid. They're getting ready to receive the next wave. However, everyone knows if you are going to do any military action from Albania into Kosovo, you are going to have to base it, at least as a forward base, from Kukash up in the northeast. Here, the Apaches and their support Black Hawk helicopters are arriving at Tirana, where the US engineers have built a new airport, in effect, at the side of Tirana, because Tirana is so clogged with the humanitarian aid effort. They needed spare apron space, runway space for the Apaches to operate out of. But for them to be used effectively, they will have to have at least a refueling, rearming point inside at the very top of Albania to give them more time.
Used to attack tanks in Kosovo. The helicopters come with 5,300 support troops and equipment. NATO has also announced plans to search any vessel heading to Yugoslavia.
Schedule, really. We said it would be a serious and sustained effort. We said it would progressively intensify. We've more than doubled the aircraft that are engaged. We're bringing in additional reconnaissance means and others, and I think we're having an effect. As I said in Washington a couple of days ago, we're winning. Milosevic is losing, and he knows it.
Far, they look graceful and light, but these Apache helicopters represent heavy fighting power, and it seems now serve as an excuse for a major U.S. military buildup in Albania.
That there is a whole structure in place, both with an intelligence structure, an air force out there, and a large ground support force out there, all of which are working in concert together to ensure the maximum safety for these pilots.
At the request of NATO Supreme Commander General Wesley Clark, who flew into Albania today to assess the mission, a massive support system is moving in for the Apaches. Rocket launchers, heavy terrain vehicles, and combat and intelligence platoons. It is far greater than the original force expected to be stationed here. Still, General Clark refused to answer the big question. Just when will the Apaches go to work?
I don't have a specific date as to when the Apaches are going to be operational, but we're on track, and it won't be too long.
The combination of General Clark's visit, the significant buildup of military hardware, and the fact that there are now more than 5,000 U.S. troops here just to support the Apaches seems to indicate a clear commitment to Albania as a staging ground should there be a ground war. Even if NATO hasn't decided yet, the framework is falling into place. Diana Oleg, CBS News, Tirana, Albania.
This airstrip on the border is where some military experts believe a NATO ground offensive would begin. Right now, it's being prepared for a possible emergency evacuation of refugees.
Inside southern Kosovo, KLA forces gather in the rain, preparing to move out to counter the Serb military buildup along the frontier. These pictures, filmed by a KLA volunteer, were said to have been shot over the last 4 days near the Roci Dugogin area. The unit commander, traveling in a captured Serb 4-ton truck, is rendezvousing with his troops. Traveling in a vehicle inside Kosovo by day suggests the KLA were in control of this southern strip of the country. Morale's pretty good, he says. The moment I say something, they do it. These were young volunteers, some in their teens, part of a force of 350 KLA massing for this attack. Are you afraid, he was asked? No, he says, I wouldn't be here if I was afraid. Using a radio scanner, they listen to Serb radio traffic as they prepare for the attack. At dusk, the force splits into 2 units before opening probing fire, trying to draw a Serb response to identify their positions. The next morning, some of the Serb dead. There were no prisoners. Of equal importance in these operations is the intelligence the KLA forces on the ground can provide to NATO in its continuing airstrikes. Today, plotting Serb forward positions for their own artillery attack. 7 women were said to be part of this frontline unit. Outgunned and outmanned, the mortar fire will help pinpoint Serb targets for the NATO air attacks. But the KLA are also taking casualties, this unit preparing to bring out their wounded. A 2-day march to pick up the injured, another 4 days to bring them out. Passing a blown-up Serb observation tower, so long a symbol of Belgrade's military dominance along this frontier. And for the local KLA force commander, one bit of welcome news. Over the radio, he's heard that his wife and family have escaped safely into Albania. I'll stay here in Kosovo, he said, until it's time to lead them home. Peter Sharp, Sky News.
Now a cockpit video. It is of an attack against a line of communication highway bridge in southern Serbia. Turning to the Serbian field forces in Kosovo, as stated earlier, poor weather impacted some of our operations. We did have success targeting a military compound and military vehicles, including tanks, armored personnel carriers, and trucks. So you see the red symbols. Now I come to another video, and it is of an attack against fielded forces in Kosovo. This is of an artillery gun in a defensive revetment. The next video is also against fielded forces. In Kosovo, in this case, there are military vehicles, the next video. Come on. No, they are during the last 36 hours. We now have a few images from recent operations. The first is an image of the Pristina Army Fuel Depot. Can I have that picture, please? Yeah. That is the pre-strike photograph, and now you see the same facility after an attack. The next slide shows the cumulative effects of our attacks against the prison army garrison, home of the 549th Motorized Infantry Battalion, a unit engaged in fielded operations in Kosovo. And you can easily see here that almost all facilities there are destroyed. And the next slide shows the result of an attack against the Rakavina road bridge in Kosovo, part of the internal supply routes used by the Serb fielded forces. 5 strikes, and you see them all.